Hey guys, it's David from amdbootstrap.com, and today we're gonna learn how to use Git in less than 20 minutes. To better understand why should you use Git, let's imagine following situation. Probably all of us were in situation where you are working on some document, let's say some Word document, and you are working with some other colleagues from work, and you prepared some version, you called it like final version, but then you realize that you have to change something. So for example, you deleted this paragraph and you saved the file as a version number 2, and then you send it to your colleagues, and then one of your colleagues edit or change something else. So it might change this paragraph, or remove this table, or add some extra image, and then it would call it, save it and call it like version number 2. Then someone else would probably do some other changes, like removing this picture and call it number 3, version number 3, 4, and so on and so on. So I believe we all been there, and we know how chaotic this can be, and that in the end you might end up in situation that you are not really sure whether you are working on the final version or not, and you are just looking into your mailbox to find the latest version, and this might be very, very confusing. And this is where Git is coming to the picture. Well, this helps to solve situation like this, but not for the Word documents, but rather for your code and different programming languages. So what is Git? Git is a modern open source distributed version control system for tracking files. So there are a lot of words in here, so let's split them up and to better understand what is it actually about. So first of all, it's a control system. This means that basically Git is a content tracker, so this place where we put our content, where we store our content. It's mostly used to store code due to the features which it provides to us. So this is also a version control system, which means that it helps us to coordinate the work among developers, and it basically keeps tracks of everything. So it keeps tracks of who changed, what changed, and when the change happened. It also allows us to revert any changes which have been made. So if we commit some new code which doesn't work, or it turns out it doesn't work, we can always get back to the previous version, so we don't lose anything, even in case we removed some piece of code because we thought we don't need it anymore, but then it turns out that it was actually needed, and it was gone, and it's gone now, so we can get back and revert it. And it's also decentralized, when that means that the code is not just stored in a central server, but the full copy of the code is present in all the developers' computers. And at the end, it's also worth mentioning that it's an open source, so like everyone can check the code, and it's not like developed by single companies. So like the society, the community can change it and adjust it. Now, what are the main concepts of Git? So it allows us to keep the track of all the file history. It allows us to create the snapshots, which we can then use, review, and come back to them if needed. We can decide when we want to create the snapshot. Of course, sometimes when we play around with some new piece of code, we do not necessarily want to create a snapshot because it doesn't work, or we didn't manage to fix something, so we don't want to keep track of it. So we decide when to create a snapshot, when we decide to take a commit, and it allows us to review those kind of snapshots from us and from other developers, and also gives us ability to revert the changes from the previous snapshots. Okay, so these are basic commands which we're gonna use today. We're gonna learn about them and how to use them. So these are main commands which we're gonna use during this tutorial. And these are the different ways how you can install install Git on your computer depending on operating system you're using at the moment. So let's start with the installation. So in order to install Git on your machine, navigate to the Git download page, choose a proper platform, operating system which you're using. I will be doing this on Windows. And once you click it, it will start downloading the installer. Once it's done, just run it. Since I have it installed, I'm gonna click this option because I'm gonna reinstall it to go it through with you guys again. And I'm gonna mostly accept the default values, so the one you can see here. Don't be surprised if this installer change because, you know, depending on the version, I'm currently installing this 2.26.1 version. Probably if you watch it in the future, this might be slightly different, but try to keep the settings same as mine. Now I'm gonna use this use Vim editor. We're gonna talk about this editor in a couple of minutes. Then from this side, this one is recommended, but I'm going with that option. So use Git and optional Unix tools, because basically Windows isn't the best platform for developers. So this will install some extra tools which are by default in Unix. So I'm gonna use this one because they're very useful, and the same I recommend for you. But it's perfectly okay for the sake of Git, only using Git, just to go with the recommended. So it's up to you. I recommend the last one. I'm gonna use this OpenSSH library, and that's for future where we're gonna learn about SSH keys. Check out Windows styles. This will make sure that we're not gonna have any issues while working with cross-platform projects. So I'll be using Windows, someone else using Mac OS, and we're not gonna have conflicts because there are some small differences in different systems. For example, on how to new line character looks like. So Git will basically take care of it, and it will just, every time we commit something, it will transform it to a proper weight. And then I'm gonna use Minty here without going much into details, and checked all checkbox here and start type or click install. When it is installed, we can uncheck release notes and we can launch git bash. So this is what we will be basically using, so this command line. Okay guys, so since we have Git installed, let's just start using it. So we're gonna start on how to use it locally, and then we will move to the remote repositories. So first of all, let's start with creation of some folder for our project. So I created the folder, I called it my web page, and I'm gonna open a git bash here. So once we open it, you can see that we are now in this directory. So the first command which we're gonna learn today is git init. So I'm gonna say git init, and if you press it, it says initialize empty git repository. If you look at the Explorer, you're not gonna see much, and this is because Windows by default it's not showing you hidden files. In order to change it in Windows, you just need to click to view and select this show hidden items, so this one, hidden items. And I also encourage you to use this file name extension so you are not get confused. So now you see this folder .git, and this is this hidden folder. All files starting with dots are hidden, and they are not shown in Windows by default. Okay. So now we have to do a quick configuration of Git. So we need to introduce ourselves. So every time we commit something and send to the repository, Git will use our name, username, and our email, so that everyone knows that this change was done by me. So in order to do that, we have to run two commands: git config -- global and user.name, and I'm gonna say my name and surname, and I'm also gonna set my email address. So user email, it's the Okay, so what we're gonna do now, we're gonna create first initial files in our folder. I'm gonna do it from command line, but you can do it anyway. You can just either create them with new file, or you can even copy them to the repository. So I'm gonna attach index.html file, and I'm gonna attach styles CSS file. Okay, so now if we run git status command, we're gonna see that we have untracked files. So those files are not yet in a repository. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna add our first file, which is index.html. In order to do it, I'm gonna use command git add. So I'm typing git add index.html and git status again, so we can see the difference now. And as you can see now, we have change to be committed. So this is gonna be committed now if we were to commit at this very moment, and we still have some untracked files. Okay, so I showed you how to file. I showed you how to add files. So obviously you can expect that there is also an option to remove files from the staging stage, just in case you by accident add some files which you don't want to commit. So in order to remove those files, we can use command git rm as removed dash cached and files which we want to remove. So if I'm gonna remove it and type git status again, you're gonna see that now again those two files are not tracked yet. Now in case you want to add multiple files, so very often you copy paste like multiple files, what's gonna happen is that instead of typing every single name of the file, you could do it like this. But of course, in case you have multiple files, that doesn't make sense to type each and every name. So you can just do git add dot, and this will basically add all files. Okay, so since we have these files added, now it's time to commit them. And I'm now going to show you two versions on how to use git commit command. The first one will be a little bit longer and it's not recommended, and then I'm going to show you the shorter version, but I just want to show you both so you are not surprised. You were not surprised in case you are doing this locally. So let's do git commit just like that and press enter, and what's going to happen is that you're going to see this editor. It's Vim editor, and it might be a little bit confusing at the very beginning because if it feels like you should be able to type now, but if you start typing, nothing really happens. In order to start typing, you need to press I on the keyboard. So you see this insert mode now, and now you're able to type. But what to type? Actually, why do you have to type? Every time you make a commit, you should add some small description on what this change consists of, right? So if you are working with different people or even for yourself, right, you are adding some code, you are adding or modifying some logic, and if you want to get back to this certain moment and you're gonna have multiple commits, you're not gonna know what has changed. So you should be kind of descriptive, stating like the summary of what has changed. In this case, I'm gonna say like add initial empty files, so I know that I added at this step only the empty files. And now then again, this is Vim, so in order to save the file and quit this editor, we have to do something which isn't that obvious. And so even if you type escape, nothing really happens. So all you have to do is press actually escape once, and then type :W for save and Q for quit, and then press enter, and this will make our commit. So if you're gonna run status again now, we will see that there are nothing to commit, nothing to change. So as I said, you can either create files or you can just copy them, and now I'm just gonna copy and paste file into the project, and if you're gonna run git status, you will see that we have this untracked file. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna quickly add this file, and I'm gonna show you the other way of committing. So the other and recommended way of doing commits is again type git commit, -m for message, and then you can provide the short summary for the message in quotation. So add logo image, and then when you press enter, it will commit, and you will see git status that nothing is pending right now. Okay, now since we have 2 commits, it's a nice time to learn a new command, which is git log. So you're gonna run git log, you will see our 2 commits. So this is the first one, initial empty files, and the second one. But before we're gonna learn a little bit more about log, let's now do some modification in our files. So I'm gonna quickly edit this in a code editor. So I'm gonna open this in Visual Studio Code. I'm gonna open this index.html file and style CSS file, and I'm gonna just paste some content which I prepared before the lesson. So now I'm gonna save the index.html file, type git status, and you're gonna see that Git realized that this file has been changed. And now I'm gonna also change the style CSS file, and I'm gonna add this one, and I'm gonna see git status. So it will see that there are 2 files changed. And now before I commit, I want to open this website and see, okay, well, I'm fine with that. This is what I was expecting. So I'm ready to commit my code. So let's again git add those 2 files and git commit them to add initial content of the web page, and I have just committed them. So now let's get back to the log part. So if you're gonna type git log, I'm gonna see the history of my commits and how we can get back to the previous commit. So now let's get back to the previous version, and I'm gonna show. Let me quickly rearrange the windows. Okay, so I rearrange my windows. So now I'm gonna run command. I'm gonna copy this commit ID, and I'm gonna run command git checkout, and I'm gonna paste it. And now I want you to observe what's gonna happen here and here in the file explorer. So I'm gonna press enter, and what you can see is that the content of this file has disappeared because in this commit we didn't have the content here, but also my logo image has disappeared here, right? Because at this moment we also didn't have this file in our repository. So as you can see, it's a full snapshot of our project. So if there were some file missing, they're gonna be missing right now. So now if I want to get back to this one or that one, let's say second one, so I want to revert my image. I don't want code, but I want to get my image back. I'm gonna say git checkout and commit name. And by the way, you will see this warning queue. You are in detached head state. Don't worry, we're gonna get into more details in the future. For now, it's okay for you to know that this is expected. So now just press enter, and you will see that our file is back, but the code didn't get back. Okay, so now we know how to get back in the future. It's like a time machine. So in the past, and now how we can get back to the newest version. And in order to do that, we're gonna use another option, which is another command, which is git branch. We're gonna learn about branches at the very end of this video. For now, just see that if we're gonna type it, I want you to know that you're gonna see the branches, and the star is showing on which branch you are currently at. And now we are in this kind of quasi branch, because by default every repository has its master branch, and now we want to get back to this master branch. We're gonna switch to this one. So in order to do that, we're gonna use command git checkout master. And if we're gonna do that, you see that now our changes and the code is back. And if we're gonna run git branch, we're gonna see that we are at our master branch right now. And at the end, just type git status, and you see that everything is committed, no change, or no files which are not untracked. Okay, so this is about the using Git locally. Now let's move to how to use Git with the remote repositories. Okay, so far we've been working on it locally, so we didn't share our repository with other developers. So now let's learn how we can share our repository with other programmers, other developers. In order to do that, we're gonna use GitHub. So this is like the I think one of the most famous remote repository. So if you don't have account, just register. If you have, just sign in, and I'm gonna sign in. Once you sign in, we're gonna you want to create a new repository. So I'm gonna create a new one. I'm gonna call it Git tutorial. You might want to add some description. You want to decide whether it's public or private. If it's public, that of course everyone can see your code, and sometimes you don't want that. In our case, it's okay if this is gonna be public. It's also wise to initialize it with readme, but we're not gonna do it. I'm gonna show you how to do it manually in the tutorial. And git ignore and license is also something which we will be learning in the future. For now, just leave it blank. So I'm gonna create it, and I'm gonna get information from them how we can now connect our local repository to our remote repository. So in this case, you can use this commands if you want to create a new empty repository, or in our case, we already have existing repositories, so we want to connect our local repository to the remote one. So we're gonna use this command line stated here. So let's do it. So first of all, I'm gonna use this command git remote add origin, and I'm gonna push our changes to master. So until now we were just committing, and that was enough. Now there is an extra step. So when we type git push, it will send our local changes to the remote repository. So let's gonna do that. Let's gonna do it now and see what's gonna happen. So as you can see, it's sending, compressing, writing, and now it says that everything has been sent, and our local master branch has been also sent to the remote master branch. And now if we refresh this page, you're gonna see that our files are available here. Okay, so now our code is sent to this remote repository, so other people can access it. So just to make sure that you understand it, let's create this readme file and send it to the remote repository. So I'm gonna create this. So I'm gonna say vi readme md file, and I'm gonna say tutorial git tutorial repo. I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna add it. I'm gonna commit it. By the way, here you can see that Git is taking care of different signs for the new line, because they are different depending on the operating system. So just to make sure that it's standardized, Git will take care of it. So even if you are working on Windows and someone else is working on Mac or Unix, you're not gonna have an issue with this new line character. So I'm gonna commit it and says initial readme file. And until now, this was the final step. But now, if you refresh the page, you will see that these changes are not yet on the remote repository. And in order to do that, to send them, we have to say git push. And now we'll see that this will send our data to the repository. And once we refresh, you're gonna see that this is gonna disappear, and we will see our readme file here. And now let's do it other way around. So I'm gonna simulate that someone else has changed the data. So I'm gonna edit this file in a browser. So I'm gonna say remote change, and I'm gonna commit it. So I'm doing exactly the same right now, but using the browser. So this is like pretty much the same like some other developer would change it and push it to the remote. So if I'm gonna see my readme file here, it says only git tutorial repo. It doesn't say remote change. So how we can get data from remote repository, we'll use git pull command And now if we see the file, you will see this change. So this is more or less how you use remote repositories. Please keep in mind that before you start working locally, always try to fetch the newest version from the remote repository, because otherwise you might end up in some conflicts, and we're gonna learn about conflicts in a code. So when two people edit the same file and try to commit them at the same time, how to solve them and how to deal with them, we will talk about it later. Okay, so now you know how to send your local repository to the remote one, but there is also the other option that sometimes you want to download the repository which is already remote, which is on the server, to your local machine. And this process is called cloning, and now we're gonna learn how to do it. So we're gonna learn it using example for our HTML and CSS tutorial. Until now you may have been doing this by downloading this zip file, but now I'm gonna show you how to get this repository using Git. Now in order to do that, click on this clone button, click on the copy button here, or just copy this path manually. Now navigate to folder where you want to clone your repository. So I'm gonna go one level up. I'm gonna open console here, and what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say git clone. I'm gonna paste this URL here. And if you didn't log into the GitHub before, you may get the prompt to log in. I did it in the past, so now it saved my credentials. But now, after that, once you provide them, it will clone repository to your local machine. And here you can see that I've got this repository in here. And if I get into this repository, I can also do the change and then commit them and then push them to the repository, if of course I was granted access to the repository by the owner. Okay, so now you have a solid foundation on how to use GitHub both in your local projects, local repositories, and how to send them to the remote servers, and how to send them to services like GitHub. You know how to clone repository of someone else to your local machine. You know how to participate and how to push data into someone else's repository. But there is of course much more to cover. I mean, Git is a very powerful tool. So if you want to get to know more advanced stuff, like for example how to resolve conflicts when two developers are editing files at the same time, they are working on the same file, or even if they are changing the same line of the code, so I'm gonna create another tutorial on more advanced stuff, more advanced Git tutorial, and you're gonna find the link to the tutorial in the description below. For now, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please leave us a comment, please like it, subscribe to our channel and turn notification on. You can also subscribe to our webinars, to our newsletter. You'll find the link in the description and video. And if you like it, please share it with others, and see you soon in the next video.